Welcome back. The last thing I remember having collapsed on a mountain in 50 degrees Celsius, no water, and trying to stay conscious was thinking, this isn't my time. But that mountain wasn't the first time I pushed myself to the edge. Because we live in a world that rewards pushing. If you're busy, even stressed because you're busy, you must be successful. Keep going, don't stop, push through. And many of us live like this. Right on the edge of a cliff. So close that when a storm comes, illness, stress, it doesn't take much to knock us off. But what if the problem isn't the storm? What if the problem is how close we're all standing to the edge? We're taught that resilience is pushing. But what I've come to learn is the pause is more powerful than the push. Burnout is twofold. On the one hand, you have overwhelm, wired and tired. And on the other, it's exhaustion, like wading through treacle. And it feels personal, but its roots are systemic. And it's now one of the fastest growing workplace issues worldwide. From 30% reporting this 10 years ago to 2 in 3 now, according to Gallup. And that's just those willing to admit it. This is not individual failure. And burnout is not a buzzword. It is a trend. And if you haven't felt it yet, chances are you will. Let me ask you something. How often do you turn up shiny, energized, and smiley on the outside, and on the inside, exhausted and depleted, thinking, it's okay, I'll just push through? You're not alone. 10 years ago, I was told I had adrenal fatigue. Other words include burnout, exhaustion, nervous breakdown. And I was told it could take up to 2 years to recover. And do you know what I thought? I'll do it in 2 months. Did I? No, it took way longer. It took years. Because the problem wasn't time, it was the pattern. A breakdown, however, can be a breakthrough. It shows us how far we've been pushing ourselves. And we finally say, I'm not doing that to myself anymore. I was a senior leader in my 30s, responsible for thousands across the Middle East and Africa, always on, always performing. And for most of my life, I believed that pushing harder was the way to succeed. My own pushing reached a head. In the summer of 2013, in the UAE, a night hike, a challenge, a time I should have been pausing in between jobs. Our carpool was much slower than the others, who were already coming back down. That should have been my red flag. But we kept on pushing. Of course, the sun came out. No trees, no shelter. And it quickly became evident we might not get off the mountain at all. Hours and hours passed. Eventually, I collapsed under a rock and heat exhaustion set in. We ran out of water, we had no signal, and one of us even went off to record goodbye messages to his family on videos. Me, somewhere in and out of the haze of consciousness, I thought to myself, is this it then? Is this really the end? I always thought there would be time, you know? Time to pause later. And now I have no time. Eventually, we heard footsteps. We didn't know it at the time, but the others had left us behind. It was police officers that came to find us after one of us reached it far enough for signal. It was Ramadan. They couldn't take water for themselves, but they gave it to us. And I kept a water bottle in my fridge for years after, a quiet reminder. Eventually, after being hospitalised, we finally drove back silently, and I walked in through the door to my empty apartment. And do you know what I did next? I started my new corporate job that Monday, and I didn't tell a soul. Because that's the pattern. We carry on and we call it resilience. Yes, I had survived the mountain, but I hadn't learned the lesson yet. 2 years later, my body finally collapsed under the weight of 1,000. Just one more moments. My results came back negative. I was healthy. So why was I so sick? It wasn't the mountain. That just revealed how close I was standing to the edge. So years later, I wanted to understand more about what happened to me, psychologically, physically, culturally. And I went to study psychology at Chester University. And my research question asked, whose responsibility is burnout anyway? And while my results came back multifaceted, while leaders can set the right environment in the workplace, and even if, as individuals, we can master emotional regulation and boundaries, it's the whole system that we live or work in that upholds these societal norms. And many of us live like this, like we're supposed to be sprinting endlessly, but nobody survives like that. Even the fastest animal on earth, the cheetah, pauses after it sprints. Somehow, we've lost the balance between the pause and the push. When we live in constant stress, our body systems adapt. Adrenaline becomes our new baseline. So when we try to relax, when we try to come down into this green area, our nervous system stays switched on. We feel guilt. I created this visual, this image, to give you an idea to help explain it, because psychologist Vallerand calls this inability to switch off obsessive passion. You might recognize it in being wired but overstimulated by your phone or your laptop, stuck in negative loops like caffeine that doesn't even seem to work anymore, being irritable more than usual, or emotionally numb. And this leads to people-pleasing, overcommitting, and physical symptoms like headache, neck strain, palpitations, foggy brain. This is our body trying to warn us, but we are so busy or so detached that we miss the signs or ignore the signs. And that pressure builds up as two sides of the same burnout coin. Overwhelm or exhaustion. On the edge. It's the pause that brings us back from the edge. And there is another way to live. Harmonious passion. This is when we're energized and engaged, but we can step back. Because resilience is not about endlessly enduring. It's about learning to restore properly. That mountain, I wore a suit. The next, I ran my own business. Another, I became a mum. Burnout doesn't care what uniform you wear, what role you play. It doesn't care if it's convenient, because this is not just my story, it's ours. And we keep pushing until something pushes back. And that's why learning to pause matters. Let's try something together. Did you feel discomfort? that discomfort you felt, that can be how the pause feels, and it's why many of us avoid it. When you stop, you notice your stress. You hear your thoughts, you feel your feelings, and you realize how tired we really are. What if I don't get going again? And that unease is what keeps us pushing forward. But trust me, if we don't take those conscious pauses, we're due for a forced one. And I see it all the time. In the client workshops and retreats that I run, people who have never stopped. And then they feel the power of the pause. And it's not just psychological, it's physiological too. The body needs time to reset, to come down from that high and be in a little bit more of a balance in that neutral zone with your pauses and your pushes. In whatever soothes your nervous system. And the longer we're up here, the more considered those pauses need to be. Pausing's not laziness, by the way. It's knowing how to use your energy wisely so you can bring back that vitalized version of yourself. They're not lost. After years of running off adrenaline, I finally made space. And what I found was simple but profound. Pausing makes life better. Even more successful than pushing ever did. You know, someone once asked me, is there anything that you wish you'd done in life? And I said, I always wanted to be a dancer. And I tried it and I loved it. But it wasn't my full purpose. But I was glad that I tried. It was their second question. What will you do when you retire? And I said I'd write a book. And they said something that stopped me. That's your real passion. So why not do it now? Why wait? What are you missing out on in the push? Pauses, they can start small and you can build upon them. Let's try one more thing together, a positive pause this time. Now, there's lots of different types of breath works for lots of different purposes. The one I'm going to do today is very quick, and it's the one that sounds like you're cleaning your glasses. I invite you to do it together with me. Take a deep belly breath. Slow down before you reply, before you say yes. Really listen to what your body is trying to tell you. Take that break that you know that you need. These small conscious pauses compound. They restore your energy, your focus, and your joy. So you can really live life. You can be successful. You can follow your dreams. Let's be the ones to lead differently. Yes, patterns are hard to change, especially the ones we've inherited unknowingly. But the people around you are watching, silently learning what's acceptable. Leaders, they set the pace at work. Models, parents, they model the blueprint at home. Community shapes what's accepted. But the truth is, if you admit struggle, model recovery, reset your boundaries, you give others permission to do the same. Now, I have a daughter, and I refuse to teach her that exhaustion is a badge of honor. I want her to have a voice decades earlier than I did, and I want her to live with energy, purpose, and community. I didn't tell anyone I was going on a night hike in the summer in the UAE. And in those pensive moments, I thought to myself, I wonder how long it would take for someone to know I was missing. Weeks maybe to ask questions, months to really notice. I didn't just lose my balance when those storms came. I lost myself in the push. and I pushed my people away. Resilience is not about endlessly enduring. That's survival. Real resilience is knowing when to pause and when to push. So the next time you feel the push, just ask yourself this. Is it urgent? Or is it just loud? The pause is more powerful than the push. Thank you.